In the age of President Trump, tweets often announce official policy. And last night it happened again when the president on Twitter declared that he would not travel to Denmark in 10 days' time. The reason? Danish leaders wouldn't discuss selling Greenland to the U.S. And thus, the massive ice-covered island and Danish autonomous territory marked yet another frigid moment in U.S. relations with an ally. Special correspondent Malcolm Brabant reports from Copenhagen.
The meticulous traditions of the Danish kingdom were trotting on as usual today, as news spread of the White House snub. Horses from the royal stables would have been used during Donald Trump's trip had he maintained his plan. A former Danish Prime Minister claims the Americans pushed for a formal state visit with all its ceremony and grandeur. The American ambassador even promoted the visit on Twitter, hours before Mr. Trump tweeted that since Greenland wasn't for sale, he wouldn't be coming. President Trump's rebuff is seen here as being doubly offensive, especially to the Danish Queen Margrethe. At her main Copenhagen residence, a spokeswoman would only say they were surprised. According to Danish royal experts, that's palace speak for being livid. The Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, delivered what she thought was a restrained response.
I had been looking forward to the visit. Our preparations were well underway. A discussion has, however, been raised about a potential sale of Greenland. This has clearly been rejected by Kim Kielsen, a position that I share, of course. This does not change the character of our good relations.
But her comments over the weekend upset the president.
No, Denmark, I looked forward to going, but I thought that the Prime Minister's statement that it was absurd, it was an absurd idea, was nasty. I thought it was an inappropriate statement. All she had to do is say, no, we wouldn't be interested, but we can't treat the United States of America the way they treated us under President Obama. I thought it was a very not nice way of saying something.
In response, the Danish Prime Minister says she won't engage in a verbal war. But Rufus Gifford, the former US ambassador to Denmark, has gone on the offensive.
It is embarrassing, but I think the bigger shame here is that, as I get the reaction from Danes this morning, there's not the level of outrage that I sort of wish there was, that this is met with a collective eye roll of sorts, that this is just Donald Trump being Donald Trump.
That eye rolling is evident on the streets of Copenhagen.
I heard it was because he couldn't buy Greenland. So if he's that stupid, I think it's good that he's not coming.
John Bergwald is an expert on the Arctic region and advises one of the left-leaning parties in the Danish parliament.
What he obviously doesn't understand is that Greenland is a sovereign country with its own government, its own parliament, its own judicial system. But at the same time, it also shows that he has no understanding whatsoever of, to be honest, international politics and diplomacy.
The Danes and Greenlanders may believe that buying the world's largest island is absurd, but the controversy has had the impact of concentrating minds at the very highest level. The former NATO Secretary-General, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, tweeted that the Arctic security and environmental challenges are too important to be considered alongside hopeless discussions like the sale of Greenland. On Twitter, Mr. Trump admonished Denmark over its defence spending as part of NATO and lambasted other European allies for taking advantage of American security guarantees.
Frankly, I think President Trump is digging a big hole for the United States with Europe. He is by far the most anti-European and anti-NATO leader that we've had.
Nicholas Burns was a career US diplomat and ambassador to NATO during the Obama administration. He's now at Harvard University.
I think this is the worst treatment of an American ally by an American president in our lifetime. I can't think of anything remotely like this. Denmark has contributed over 10,000 soldiers over 17 years in Afghanistan. They've lost soldiers there. They have been with us in every major conflict for the past 100 years.
Many Greenlanders have been offended by President Trump. But Aya Chemnitz Larsen, one of two lawmakers representing the territory in the Danish parliament, is taking a more positive view.
I think it would be quite interesting to get him to Greenland instead, because it shows a clear interest in Greenland if you look at the process. So I think in many ways it actually put Greenland in a good position.
So why is Greenland suddenly demanding everyone's attention? The short answer is climate change. This is Ilulissat on Greenland's west coast, opposite Canada, which spawns icebergs of the size that sank the Titanic.
Where we are right now, we see the stranded icebergs. They are coming from the main Jakobshavn Glacier up the fjord, 60 kilometer inland. These are the biggest icebergs which get stranded here.
Professor René Forsberg works with NASA and the European Space Agency to monitor climate change.
The Greenland ice sheet mass loss is accelerating, and it has been accelerating for the last 20 years. You can see that from the space, and we can see that from the measurements we do. There's a lot of untapped potential in the mineral domain, and when the ice sheet retreats, the edges go sort of closer to the center of the ice. You do expose new areas.
This mining project in southern Greenland is a source of potential riches. It's backed heavily by Chinese investors who want to access rare earth metals used in mobile phone and other advanced technologies. The area also has large uranium deposits. The company behind the project predicts a possible annual income of $700 million. There's concern in the US and Denmark that if China gets a commercial foothold in Greenland, it will mutate into governmental interference in the Arctic. Recently, China was in the running to build 3 new airports in Greenland, but was blocked when, at America's insistence, Denmark stepped in with the necessary finance. The United States operates the Thule Air Base in Greenland, which provides early missile warning, space surveillance and control. Having Chinese neighbours would have been most unwelcome. The melting ice cap is opening up new shipping routes across the top of the world, which means shorter voyages for vessels carrying Chinese goods. Russia is also fiercely competitive in the Arctic. While Greenland is not for sale, it is open for business to America, despite, not because, of President Trump.
We would like to have collaboration with the US, both when we talk about defense, but especially when we talk about investment.
But Greenland is a difficult landscape with a harsh climate, and to realize its potential treasures will require time and patience, qualities not normally associated with the Trump White House. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Malcolm Brabant in Copenhagen.